So welcome today to this video where we'll be investigating some of the stuff that's interesting in the sporting world. So for a start, there are three numbers I want you to keep in your head. One is million, okay. The other one is 500,000 or $50,000, and the other one is 42 million. So these numbers will help you in the end when we discuss more about what's going on. So first thing is first, I was shocked when I read an article on ESPN on July the 13th, and it kind of got me thinking, like, what's really going on in the sporting world, you know? So for me, it was kind of an eye-opening event. So let's get into it. So first thing is, ESPN wrote on the 13th of July that FIFA will be paying a total of 209 million to clubs who have players that competed in the World Cup. So it was kind of interesting. So now the 4 million I told you to keep in your head comes from this. So Manchester City is the team that got the most out of the payout that teams got from, players participating in the World Cup, which is kind of ironic if you think about it, because for me, I looked at it and I thought to myself, why do African countries pay so much attention, and in particular, why do they want to participate in the World Cup? I did a little bit of digging. So these are the papers. So let's dive right into it. So FIFA is paying 209 million to 440 clubs in 51 countries. This is one thing that you should keep in mind. The 209 million goes to these 440 clubs, which had a total of nearly 800 players which participated in the Qatar World Cup. And the irony from this comes from a few weeks back. For all those who pay attention to football, Zimbabwe was accepted back into FIFA, and it got me to think, why are these guys so much interested in wanting a Zimbabwean team to participate at the World Cup or play the qualifiers? Which feels like, to most football fans, it's normal. We want to participate at the World Cup and do all this stuff, right? Yeah, sure, you want that, which makes sense if you do that. So, and then it got me thinking, the rush to do it with a team which is subpar or underperforming, why there's so much interest? And I realized, for most of us, we don't really know why these countries want to participate in these competitions. So it got me digging again. FIFA is reported to have paid 10,950 to each player, with a total of 837 players receiving the payment. Again, each player getting 10,950, right? Like, the Mbappes, the Sadio Manes and everything. It's kind of weird because you think they get that much money, but to them it's okay. But think of a player that plays in Zimbabwe or in South Africa, or let's convert it then to SA dollars. So assume that South Africa participates at the World Cup and South Africa qualifies for the World Cup and plays at the World Cup. It means each player is getting a total of 100,000 rands for 2 months. Most players don't make that much money. Of course, in Zimbabwe, no player makes that much money, right? So, now, the 4 million comes from this. So, Man City received a total of 4.6 million in payment. Why does Zimbabwe really want to participate in the World Cup? Considering that, it's not a lie, it's public information, public domain information, that we have one of the most scandalous football associations in the world. That's why we got banned in the first place, right? So the dark part, or the dark secrets to this video, is coming from this section, actually. So in comparison, a simple answer is, if Zimbabwe would play in the FIFA World Cup and they qualify, according to FIFA, you are given 1.3 million just for qualifying to the World Cup. So qualifying for the World Cup, you get 1.3 million just for being there, for showing up, turning up, say, we showed up, yay, we're here at the competition, right? So now let's read here. So let me read this part for you. According to NBC article, FIFA paid out a total of 440 million to teams at the World Cup last year. We all know why most of these teams, money is key in our country. Like, everyone knows that money is key, right? So back to the story. Each team which qualifies will receive the 1.4 or 1.5 US dollars just for being there, for showing up. These are figures based on the 2018 World Cup and the 2022 World Cup that took part in Qatar, right? So now, in comparison to how much the teams got, so teams which made it to the round of 16 got 13 million, and teams that made it to the quarterfinals got 17 million each, and the fourth place team, which is Morocco, the African country Morocco, they got a total payment of $25 million. See the amount of money we're talking about here? It's a lot of money, right? So, and then we move on. Third place, Croatia got 27 million. Runners up, which was France, they got 30 million. So a curious point here on France. In 2018, they won the World Cup, and then now they got this much. So FIFA increased the amount of money you're getting for winning the World Cup from 38 million to 42 million. So in a space of 8 years, France made a total of 68 million from playing at the World Cup. For being the winner for the last World Cup, got a total payment of 42 million, right? The levels of corruption we have in our footballing world, in Africa in particular, that 1.5 million that is supposed to be shared amongst all the players as bonuses for qualifying, the people in power usually end up stealing that money. Basically, that's what happens. So what then happens is teams, let's take for example like in Zimbabwe, the big teams. I've always wondered why teams like Highlanders, Dynamos, Caps United, FC Platinum, Gezi Platinum, the so-called big names in our football country, always were curious about why they wanted to participate in these tournaments and why their players participate in these tournaments. Because they get payouts. I've always wondered why they don't pick players from Division 1 or players from lower divisions, right? So it's always been something that has always puzzled me on what's happening and why that happens. It's because if players from Highlanders, say 10 players from Highlanders, get a payout, right, from FIFA for playing at the World Cup, then they have this amount of money that they use to keep for themselves. And the players just get that basic amount for just playing there at the World Cup. So people might wonder, oh, why aren't people picking teams from players from Division 1 to play at qualifiers, play for at these major tournaments? Like, I told you to keep 50,000 or 500 rands, 50,000 US or 500,000 rands in your head, because that's the amount of money teams that participated at the COSAFA got. And it is mandatory for these governing bodies to take a certain chunk of money and give it back to the teams that are participating at these tournaments. Right? Makes sense. But then that's where the corruption comes from. Players who are really good from lower divisions don't get noticed. Or even if they get noticed, they get overlooked because they're not playing for these big teams which want to put their players there and get that total amount that comes from these governing bodies. Right? So I think most people don't understand the impact of this. It makes sense why Africans don't usually include players who are really good to participate at these tournaments. Because they want money. You pick a player, you have your player, you as an agent, you hustle the managers, you hustle the organization, and then in so hustling the organization, you then take that money and you put it into your player. The player gets 10,000 from the World Cup, from qualifying, or from each tournament that they bring in. You take your 10% or your 20% cut from their pay. So now it makes sense why we as African teams will never be that good, because everything we focus on is putting people who can bring value to the people in power back the money, instead of giving right people advantages and spotlights to shine where they're supposed to shine. This is one of the far most interesting things, because in this investigation we discovered that it's quite amazing that these governing bodies don't usually report their findings or their finances, but FIFA gave us these finances, this insight on how things should work. So I think now, as you all know, this, my fellow viewers, is what we call the dark side of African football. The people who are not so good at playing football get the chances to go and present the countries you so much love and pride yourself with. And in so doing, they're not that good. First of all, it's about the money. Second, third, we will never improve. Because this is what we discovered. And I hope everyone who was watching and everyone who has input and everyone who feels the same way can comment in the comment section below, because this is why so many African countries will do anything, and I mean anything, to get readmitted back into FIFA.